I want to thank everyone who helped to make this event possible, and for all of you turning out tonight. It is wonderful to be surrounded by so many people dedicated to having meaningful conversation about this system of mass incarceration, a system that has decimated so many of our communities, destroyed so many of our families, and literally turned back the clock on racial progress in the United States. We live in confusing times today. It's a time of great paradox. You flip on the news, you flip on the television, and there is President Barack Obama, our nation's first Black president, standing in the Rose Garden looking handsome, dignified, and in charge. You turn the channel and there's Michelle Obama digging a garden in the backyard of the White House, not as a slave or a maid or as a servant, but as the First Lady, schooling our nation on better health and how to be good stewards of our planet. And then you flip the channel again and there's the whole Obama family, ascending the stairs from Air Force One, waving to the crowd, cheered by America, cheered by the world. But then you drive a few blocks from the White House, and you find the other America. You wonder what wrong turn you made and how you managed to miss that promised land with all your might. A vast new racial undercast now exists in America, but you won't hear about it on the evening news. Obama won't mention it, the Tea Party won't mention it. Media pundits would rather talk about anything else. The members of the undercast now live in literal cages, often removed from our communities hundreds of miles away. The members of the undercast are often locked in ghettoized communities on the other side of town, often invisible to those who have decent jobs, live in good neighborhoods, and zoom around on freeways past the virtual and literal prisons in which they live. They're part of the other America. And it is another America that far too many of us have been asleep to for far too long. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. once said, quote, "There is nothing more tragic than to sleep through a revolution," end quote. And he was talking at that time about a profound moral revolution that was underway in this country, a struggle for the dignity and humanity of all humankind, a struggle to end what was then America's latest caste system known as Jim Crow. And just months before his death, he told an audience the story of Rip Van Winkle, who famously fell asleep for 20 years. When Rip began his extended nap, there was a sign posted on the wall of a nearby inn that had a picture of King George III emblazoned on it. But when Rip woke up, 2 decades later, the sign had a picture of George Washington on it. And Dr. King noted that the most striking fact about Rip Van Winkle wasn't that he had slept for 20 years, but that he had slept through a revolution. He said, quote, "There are all too many people who, in periods of great social change, fail to achieve the new mental outlooks that the new situation demands." I believe his words are as relevant today as they were back then. Many of us, myself included, slept through a revolution, actually a counter-revolution. A counter-revolution that has blown back so much of the progress that Dr. King and countless others risked their lives for and some died for. This counter-revolution has occurred with barely a whimper of protest. even as millions of people, millions, have been rounded up, locked in cages, and then stripped of the very civil and human rights that Dr. King and so many others gave their lives for. In the years since Dr. King's death, a vast new system of racial and social control has emerged, one that certainly would have Dr. King turning in his grave today. We are now on the eve of celebrating Dr. King's birthday. And I think it's apt at a time like this to reflect on how much has really changed. You ask most people and they'll say, well, so much has changed. So much. We're free now to sit at any lunch counter, eat at any restaurant. Just look at the black lawyers and black doctors. Just look at Barack Obama. Just look at Oprah Winfrey and Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell, and the list goes on and on. Look at how far we've come. And then there's always the pause, but of course we still have a long way to go. And this kind of talk, and that familiar line, implies that we're on the right path, and if we just keep plodding along, sooner or later we're gonna get to that promised land. But is that right?
No.
Are we truly on the right path, the same path that Dr. King and so many others were traveling not that long ago? Or could it be that we have taken a dramatic U-turn? Could it be that we are headed right back in so many ways to where we began? But what would Dr. King have to say about mass incarceration in the United States if he were alive today? Mass incarceration has emerged as a new caste system, one that shuttles impoverished, typically poor black and brown children from decrepit, underfunded schools to brand new high-tech prisons. It is a system that locks poor people, overwhelmingly poor people of color, into a permanent second-class